About the robbery incident, I have something to ask your father. A robbery? My father? Yes, your father is suspected of the robbery. Is he at home now? Yes, he's here, but do you want to see him?
The police officer looked puzzled at my tone for a moment, but then said,
Please let me see him, so I led the police officer inside the house. My father is here.
Upon seeing my father, the police officer was stunned. We go back several months. My name is Joseph McCann, a senior. I have landed a job at a major corporation and I would like to say I'm relieved. But there's something I'm still unsure about. It's whether or not I should take over the company my father runs. My father is a president of a local factory. When I was young, I wanted to inherit the local factory and become a president like my father. But those feelings disappeared when I hit my rebellious period. I began to feel embarrassed about my father always in work clothes and covered in grease. That feeling hasn't changed even into adolescence, and now it lingers somewhere in my heart. Having grown up and knowing the hardships of work through part-time jobs, I did develop respect for my father, who carries the lives of many employees and their families. But I couldn't shake the thought that an office worker in a suit might be cooler. One day while shopping with my father, we were suddenly called from behind, "Aston!" And both my father and I turned around. The man there appeared to be the same age as my father.
Duncan, it's been a long time.
This Duncan seemed to be my father's high school classmate. Dressed in a suit, Duncan was apparently out on sales calls. After revealing that he worked for a famous major corporation, Duncan asked my father,
"So, you took over the family business?"
"Yes, that's right. I'm still making it work somehow."
"That filthy little local factory, right? Becoming the boss of a place like that and with only a high school diploma? You really have sunk low, haven't you?"
I was stunned by Duncan's words. That local factory was started by my grandfather and my father was a second generation. I knew he took over after high school, but I never thought I would have a classmate who would mock it. Duncan continued, smiling silently at my father.
"So, did you manage to grow your father's local factory? Weren't you saying you were going to take over the company in high school and make it big?" No, unfortunately, it seems I didn't have the business sense. That dream never came true." "Well, that's just like you. You were skilled with your hands, but not smart in the head. But at least you didn't ruin the company, right? I thought someone like you would have run it into the ground."
Duncan, laughing heartily, slapped my father's shoulder and said,
"I have to get back to work. I'll see you at the next reunion."
Then he left. My father, who had been berated, seemed a bit awkward and said,
"Well, shall we go?"
and started walking to resume shopping. At that moment, I felt that my father's work, which had just been belittled without any rebuttal from me, was something to be ridiculed. The choice of taking over my father's company or getting a job at a major well-known company titled heavily towards joining the big corporation. A few weeks later, my father's reunion was held. Coincidentally, the venue was the restaurant where I work part-time. It was a busy day, and I didn't have a chance to serve food or drinks to the table where my father's reunion was taking place. I thought I was lucky, but after a while the opportunity arose. I felt a little embarrassed to bring drinks to my father's reunion, but since it was my job, I did so without saying anything. Our restaurant consists entirely of private booths. When I popped my head into the large room rented out for my father's reunion, my father, who was near the entrance, greeted me with a smile, saying,
"Oh, Joseph."
"Could he be your son?" a woman nearby asked. My dad introduced me as his son, so I politely greeted,
My father is in York here," and light up the drinks I brought on the table.
With remarks from Dad's inebriated classmates about how my eyes resembled my father's or how serious I am like him, I awkwardly laughed. Then from a distance, Duncan noticed us and said,
"We met just the other day. Joseph, was it? Planning to take over Aston's local factory?"
At Duncan's boozy question, I replied with disgust yet honesty,
"No, I'm still considering it."
And Duncan loudly exclaimed,
"Don't do it. Aston's company is nothing great. Rather than taking over a company like that, Joseph should work in a company just like me."
Saying this, Duncan began bragging about his work history, but something was off. He had said he was in sales when we last met, but now he was talking about being a head of the accounting department. I felt a dissonance but kept quiet, knowing that pointing it out might cause trouble. But my drunk father's mouth was loose.
It hasn't been long since we last met. Did you change departments? It's only been a few weeks since we bumped into each other. Quite a hasty transfer, huh? Sales didn't suit you?
At my father's words, Duncan's usually chatty mouth stopped. A flustered Duncan nodded, saying,
Yes, a dirty job like sales didn't suit me. I became head of the accounting department as soon as I transferred.
That's strange. I heard that company was merged with a global enterprise and the accounting base is overseas, isn't it? As my father pointed out, Duncan's bragged about company had been merged into a global corporation. It seemed many others knew this but hadn't said anything, and laughter erupted at my father's comment.
Hey Duncan, what's going on? You're the head of accounting at a merged place? Shut up. I can't stay at this gathering.
Embarrassed, Duncan trembled with frustration and announced, "I'm leaving." Then he stomped out, leaving with loud footsteps.
I wonder if I did something wrong,
the father said. But the people around assured him that it wasn't the case and that Duncan had always been like that. Watching my father being praised for speaking his mind, I felt happy. Even though he was a bit tipsy, my dad had the guts to say what everyone else found hard to put into words. He was quite impressive. Half a year passed from that day. I was still struggling with whether or not to take over my father's company. The uncertainty deepened daily, and honestly, I was so confused that I didn't know what to do. Then one day, while relaxing at home, the doorbell rang. My mother was out, so I answered it.
Yes? Hello, you're Mr. McKen, right?
The visitor was a police officer in uniform. Startled, I replied in a tense voice, yes? As I began to worry about what might have happened, the police officer said,
I have some questions for your father about a robbery. A robbery? My father? Yes, that's right. Your father is suspected of robbery. Is he at home now? Yes, he is here, but do you want to see him?
From my tone, the police officer looked puzzled for a moment, but said,
please let me see him. Here is my father.
What was there was an altar and my father's photograph. I then told the stunned police officer that my father had passed away in traffic accident.
I'm sorry for your loss,
the police officer said, and I asked him, my father was not a person who would rob anyone. Who is suspecting my father of being a robber?
I cannot share that personal information. I truly apologize for today's intrusion.
After apologizing repeatedly, the police officer left. Who on earth had accused my father of robbery? I was feeling frustrated, but the answer was soon revealed. A few days later, I was helping out at my father's local factory, taking over the role since he had passed away. My mother has been filling in for my father, but she's already in her 50s, and she had only assisted my father a little in his work. It didn't feel enough to replace my father, so I was the one helping. That's when Duncan barged in.
Aston, come out. Return what you stole.
The factory was filled with the loud noise of heavy machinery. But Duncan shouted over it with a voice so loud that I was taken aback, and I wasn't the only one. The other workers stopped in surprise, and I spoke to Duncan.
My father isn't here. Then, he's home? Call him right here. I've been robbed and I'm in trouble.
I could hear a voice from among the workers asking, "Robbed, the boss?" But Duncan crossed his arms and stood firm. He was angrily repeating, "Bring out Aston." So I asked him, "My father is not the kind of person who would rob someone.
Are you sure you're not mistaken?" "No, it was Aston. Aston must have been jealous of me working for a big company and stole my bag. Luckily, I didn't have my wallet with me, but the fact that he robbed me is unforgivable. The police are useless, so I came here myself. Let me talk to Aston."
When did this robbery happen, by the way?"
"It was about 2 weeks ago."
The workers began to murmur at Duncan's answer, which he gave after some hesitation. He seemed confused by the commotion. When I asked Duncan,
"So it was really 2 weeks ago?"
he seemed to lose his temper at my persistence.
He started yelling, "What's going on? Why do you keep checking? I told you it was 2 weeks ago. I, an elite, came all the way to this small, greasy local factory. Let me see Aston now."
I felt a surge of heat in my chest at Duncan's commotion. It was unbearable to hear Duncan denigrate my father's work and the work of his employees at my father's workplace. But the worst part was trying to pin the crime of robbery on my father. My father died in a traffic accident a month ago, so he cannot be here. When I told him this, Duncan's face showed surprise and he said, "What?" I continued, "How could my father, who died a month ago, rob anyone? Are you sure you were really robbed?" I knew Duncan was a liar, and that came to light at the recent class reunion. I later found out from my father's classmates that Duncan had been a liar since his student days. Furthermore, a girl Duncan liked had a crush on my father, and it seems that Duncan has harbored a pointless rivalry with my father since those days. I couldn't forgive Duncan, who was trying to pin a crime on my father out of such a silly rivalry. So you're saying that he was robbed a month ago? He must have committed a robbery just before he died, right? Just as I was about to yell at Duncan, who was still persisting, I heard a shout from another direction. "The boss would never do such a thing. The boss is a very serious person." That's right. The reason we are always short-staffed is that the boss teaches us skills and that encourages us to be independent. He's always thinking about his employees and clients, never about profits. He was a good person. As Duncan faltered, praise for my father came one after another. I was sincerely moved. I felt ashamed of myself for ever thinking that my father's work was embarrassing. My father was a boss who was respected by his employees and loved enough to be defended even in this situation. Duncan's eyes filled with tears as voices defending my father rose from the factory. I delivered the final blow. "I will definitely consult the police about you trying to pin a false charge on my father." With that, Duncan let out a cry and ran out of the factory. After that, I went to the police to consult them about my father being framed by Duncan just as I had declared. The evidence was Duncan's statement, which had been recorded on a mobile phone by one of the employees who thoughtfully did it for us. Thanks to one of the employees recording the argument, there was evidence left. The police acted quickly since there was evidence, and Duncan was caught in no time. Duncan's act of framing someone with a false charge became his crime, and he seems to be behind bars for a while. He mocked my father while he was alive and tried to pin a crime of him even after he was gone. I felt a sense of relief, thinking he deserved to suffer. A few days later, a woman claiming to be Duncan's wife came to apologize to my mother and me. When I asked if Duncan's attempt to frame my father was due to what happened at the reunion, Duncan's wife sighed and told me, "That's right, it seems like something that hit a sore spot at the reunion was the cause. In fact, Duncan was a former high flyer, and it appeared that he had been fired from his job. He was looking for new employment but without success, and that's when he ran into me and my father. Duncan was fixated on being an elite and told lies, but when he got drunk, he ended up telling inconsistent lies, embarrassing himself. Enraged, Duncan began to resent my father, deciding to frame him. I was utterly dumbfounded by the outrageous reasons for the lies, and it seems Duncan's wife felt the same way. She informed me that she plans to divorce Duncan. Apparently, Duncan has no children, so even if he gets out of jail, there won't be anyone waiting for him. After graduating college, as for what I did, I decided to take over my father's company. I was concerned about the company's management since my father had just passed away. But I could never forget the voices of the employees who defended my father when Duncan framed him with lies. I wanted to become a boss who is loved and respected by the employees, and that incident made me feel that way from the bottom of my heart. I was part of the business school, so I can handle the management part that my father was weak at. But I need the staff to teach me about the technology. The staff say, "We'll teach you anything for the boss's son," and they're always ready to help me. They also share a lot of memories about my father, making me realize his greatness every time. "Dad, you were really an amazing person. I'm ashamed. I didn't realize it while you were alive. I'm truly sorry." I talked to his picture. "I'm covered in oil stains after work. I'm ashamed of myself for thinking this was uncool. These stains were evidence of how hard my father had worked." "I'll work hard to become a boss like you, Dad. I'll make sure to fulfill your dream." I talked to his picture and it seems like my father is smiling back. I intend to work my hardest to become a boss like my father. I want to fulfill my father's dream of expanding our local factory, which has been in our family since my grandfather's time.